minister must be able to defend the rights of the workers and make sure that they implement the program of job creation and the continuation of making sure that service delivery is delivered to the people of South Africa. But we must also say that there are ministers that we have both ministers and deputy ministers that we look at to them, and we think that it's going to be very difficult to begin to climatize in terms of the work, the issues of lack of capacity, the issues around looking whether these people are going to take the policies of government into the implementation is something that we think that it's very going to be difficult. But we must also say that our position in terms of the attitude towards the DA is not compromised. DA, we want to be specific, DA remains the enemy of the workers. You all know what DA did to the workers. We all know.
Okay, so I hear you. So what are you going to do about it? I mean, the president of the country, in this case the ANC, is in alliance with COSATU, and you completely distance yourself from the DA, the same DA that the president of the country, or the ANC in this case, they're in partners with now. So what are you going to do about it as COSATU?
Yeah, no, that's why we're saying we're putting our eyes, we're putting our ears and look and monitor and see what's going to be the attitude of TA in particular, those who are given strategic ministerial position that is linked to the workers. For an example, agriculture. State liaison is given agriculture is totally linked to the workers. We're going to monitor that.
Okay, but sorry, let's get clarity on this. What I'm saying to you is you're going to monitor them in terms of how they implement, right? Remember, they also
how they conduct themselves.
Okay.
Whether they've changed their mind against the workers or what's going to happen.
All right. Now, we also accept that they must also be part of an agreement that would be put through by the president. So there's a limit to, in the same way that COSATU can be in alliance with the ANC and you don't always get what you want, in the same way they also don't get what they want. They would have to negotiate that with the president. I'm just saying that. The reason I'm asking that question is this, right? If you're so unhappy with the DA, why would you then wait for the DA to see how their ministers deliver? Why is it not a major fallout between the ANC and COSATU?
No. Well, the issue about the fallout between COSATU and the ANC is the matter that must be discussed by the members of COSATU. But we want to say that this issue of the attitude and the conduct of the DA, our concern in relation to DA, been given a position or portfolio committee of the basic education, the issues of. We have raised it to the minister, the president. We have said this is unfair and this is a concern that workers is raising. We hope that this matter will find.
Okay, but then obviously the point I'm getting at is the president didn't listen to you, right? In raising it, whatever the reasons were, whatever agreement and bartering they had to make, the president chose that he needed to appease the DA to get them on board rather than make COSATU happy. So where does that put the ANC-COSATU relationship?
Well, that's why I'm saying the issue of the relationship between COSATU and the ANC remains, but the issue of the conduct of DA, in this case we are talking about DA, we're not talking about the ANC, and the president who was doing that appointment is the president of the Republic of South Africa. But as I said, it was difficult under this government of national unity for the president to establish a government that will satisfy everybody. So that's why we're saying we're put eye and monitor and sit and put our eye to whoever is going to have a position of dealing with workers, undermining the laws that we have in this country. He will find us on the ground. We will find us on fire.
You're going to find yourself on fire. Did you?
Yes.
I mean, are you going to have a showdown talk with the president or the ANC rather? You see, because you're not talking directly to the DA, but would you be speaking to the ANC president, who's the president of the country, in terms of a showdown?
That's why I'm saying in the meeting we did raise it, but we are going to raise up this matter in the coming political council in the alliance. Our concern will remain, and I want to repeat, our DA remains the enemy of the workers and the enemy of the working class.
All right, let me just say this again, because I think it's important. If the DA is the enemy of the workers and COSATU represents the workers, and COSATU has a hugely important relationship with the ANC, and the ANC does a deal with the DA, my question to you is that not a sufficient fallout between COSATU and the ANC to consider going forward that not so much how can you work with the DA, you've already made the point, but how can you be working with the ANC going forward?
I've said to you that this matter of the relationship between the ANC will be discussed with the leadership with the membership of COSATU. In this case, we are not talking about the ANC, we are talking about the government of the national unity.
Okay, that's where we will leave it. Lots to come out of that conversation, and I hear that from often. Lots of people unhappy, disgruntled with some of the positions given to the DA people within the ANC circles, and we're well aware of that. And COSATU is very much part of that alliance. That's Solly Petwe's take, and I've given my thoughts. You have an opinion on that? What's your point regarding where does COSATU now go in terms of their relationship with the African National Congress? Just think about that. Comment as well on the Aisha Pando tweet if you like, in terms of Naledi Pando. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock, and heading the news desk is Madupi Makhalamele.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your top story is Asawa. The markets welcome South Africa's new cabinet and Ekurhuleni and Tshwane to experience low water pressure. A very good afternoon. The markets have welcomed the country's new cabinet announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa last night. The rand strengthened to 18 to the dollar when the JNC opened at 9 o'clock this morning after closing at 18.45 on Friday. The JSE index traded higher at around 80,315 points after the cabinet announcement, which also confirmed that Enoch Kotongwana would remain as finance minister. Makwe Masilela of Makwe Fund Managers says the new cabinet, which comprises of ministers and deputy ministers from different political parties, has brought market stability after 2 weeks of uncertainty amid tense negotiations to form a GNU.
I think the markets now will be looking more into the guys implementing what they're supposed to be implementing. That is to make sure that they accelerate the economic reforms. That will be key. And also to see whether the guys are able to coordinate well among themselves. There are no conflicts. People don't end up trying to serve their constituency or their party. Or people are not doing things in such a way that basically they are preparing themselves for the next elections to be able to have a point to prove. So markets now will be looking more into today.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to deliver the opening of Parliament address, the OPA, on the 18th of July. National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza and the chairperson of the NCOP, Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane, confirmed this through a media statement. The statement says the OPA is different from the annual State of the Nation address, the SONA, also delivered by the President. It further states that during the SONA, the President outlines the government's plans for the next 12 months, while during the OPA, he outlines the new administration's plans for the next 5 years. The statement also explains that SONA occurs annually, while the OPA only occurs once every 5 years, immediately after the elections. U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brigidi, has congratulated President Ramaphosa on finalizing his executive. He says, America respects the will of the people of South Africa.
First of all, again, congratulations to the people of South Africa for a very successful election and the 30th anniversary of democracy. And congratulations to President Ramaphosa and the people of South Africa on forming the government for the 7th administration. And we look forward to working with them on a host of issues.
Brigidi also says that the U.S. will continue to strengthen its trade relations with South Africa.
Pambili is an initiative to anchor the positive aspects of the relationships between the United States of America and the Republic of South Africa using the rich ecosystem of the city of Atlanta, focused on trade, but including many other issues as well. We are excited about the announcement of Minister-elect Tao to be the new Minister of Trade, Investment and Competition, and we look forward to working with him on this and a variety of other issues together.
The cities of Ekurhuleni and Tshwane are expected to experience a low pressure to no water as the project to maintain major infrastructure moves to their municipalities. This as Rand Water plans to replace valves on major pipelines in Ekurhuleni, Tembisa, Germiston and Alberton. The areas among those to be affected by the low water pressure. Water tankers will be dispatched to those affected. The city of Ekurhuleni, Zimbali Matiwane, urges businesses to use water sparingly.
Prepare for this big shutdown. The city convened a workshop or stakeholder engagement where we just took through the big users of the magnitude of the work, how is it going to affect them, and what do we need from them in order to prepare for this maintenance work. So encouraging industry to avoid the use of other uses of potable water. We just encourage them to re-engineer their processes to still produce the same quality but using less water.
And the head of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, Dr. Mohammed Abu Salmiya, who was detained by Israel for more than 7 months, has been released. He was arrested in November last year after Israel claimed that the hospital was being used by Hamas as a command and control center. The hospital and the doctor have denied the allegations. The BBC's Sebastian Asher has more.
He's alleged that he was tortured and that he saw torture in the prisons as well. Now, we've heard similar allegations from prisoners who've been released recently. We have contacted the Israeli Prison Service, which essentially said that it hadn't heard any of those complaints, but that everyone who goes to prison in Israel has the right to file a complaint and that it will be fully examined.
The top story at 5, the markets have welcomed the country's new cabinet announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa last night. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
Coming up in your sports, Tennis South Africa launched Fan Park to watch Wimbledon and Kaizer Chiefs sack Kevin Johnson. More details at 5:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And it's still very heavy on the N12, the southern bypass around towards Oakdene, coming from Alberton. It's this morning's truck fire incident that's still there. All lanes were closed a short time ago. They have managed to open. Some traffic is flowing, but it's a major backlog to clear through. The queue basically starts as you come off the N3 at Ilan's interchange and pick up the N12. You're all of a sudden into that traffic queue, and it extends right the way through towards that Oakdene and Kamaru Street exit. The N1 going south's really heavy today as well. Big traffic between Buccleuch interchange and Malabongwe Drive, and then just after Malabongwe it's jammed all the way through towards Maresburg. If you're heading towards Soweto, it is going to be a long haul this afternoon, unfortunately. Durban, the N3 outbound, pretty slow between Spaghetti Junction and Paradise Valley. That's through the roadworks. There's more delays between Camperdown and Umlust Road on that section of the N3 up to Pietermaritzburg. Cape Town today, 2 crash scenes causing delays on the N2. Thankfully, one of them's just been cleared. That's the N2 outbound at the R300. It'll take a while for that traffic to ease, passing the airport, approaching Khayelitsha. It's heavy, and then moving through Khayelitsha, a crash before Baden-Powell Drive. The N2 outbound is heavy, N2 inbound also getting caught up in that with a delay towards Spine Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Still lots of comments coming from people about just the makeup of the GNUs. Some people still commenting about don't use the term GNU because it's not. And I think I've expressed my opinions in terms of what we can call it versus my opinions about it. Other comments about what I said earlier, that is different as these political parties are. They are effectively like they basically have to aspire to what the Springboks did and be stronger together, coming from, different clubs in different provinces and work together to win the big thing, which is the World Cup. So the question is for the government, what's the World Cup for the government? The World Cup has got to be building a nation, what I call a champion nation, where everything works in sync and the best aspirations of all the people who live here will be fulfilled in this country. To get there, there's a lot of considerations to be made, and many people commenting, of course, understandably, about the composition of of the cabinet and what's to make of that. The latest thought on that is with Sanusha Naidu, who is a political analyst from the Institute for Global Dialogue. Sanusha, appreciate your time. You're live with the National Pulse. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and thank you for the invitation.
Good night. You've been like incredibly busy the last 3 months. I've noticed that. It has been that sort of period, isn't it? Right. What's your one-line assessment, firstly, of what you heard last night?
Well, I think it's really the question of how this government of national unity, given its mandate, but also given the fact that it has so many different kind of political representation in it, how does it come together and form that analogy that you mentioned around coming together as a rugby team? There's going to be a lot of scrums in that government of national unity, whether or not they're able to find that cohesive center and hold, I think, is going to be critical.
So so you knew in advance that there were going to be compromises, and we're well aware of that, right? And it's not that easy for any president of any country to put together a cabinet, in this case, maybe even doubly so, right? But looking into the naming of the cabinet, I would think that you were looking out for some key signs. What were they and what emerged from those signs that you looked out for?
Well, I think we kind of wanted to understand what will be the distribution of some of the portfolios in the context of the clusters of government, particularly the economic cluster, the social development cluster, and of course we can't ignore the governance as well as the security cluster. And in those kinds of workings of the different ministries that fall under these 6 or 7 broad clusters that form the cabinet. The question is who would go into those ministries, and what would be the kind of discussions or negotiations. And so we saw the leaks that were happening from the letters that were kind of dripped into the broader public domain. And then of course we also realized that some of those ministries that we were looking at, particularly how it links back to Operation Velendela, which is really a big key program of action for the president in terms of economic reforms, but building that into a social development construct that enables for growth to happen, but also enables for the social development architecture to find traction. It's really those kinds of things. But I think one of the key things for me was also watching out for the way in which the presidency would have evolved in terms of how we saw in the last administration of President Ramaphosa, where there was a lot of kind of traction being built in the presidency around decision-making. And that in itself, I think, is critical because you have to think about what is the relationship between the ventilation of the presidency as a kind of important architecture of the executive in the organogram of this cabinet, but how does it enable for that decision-making not to be centralized within the presidency. And I think that's something we have to watch constantly now in this administration in terms of the lines of accountability. We talk a lot about the accountability of cabinet to the parliament and how that is an important construct in terms of the separation of powers. But I think the question also remains is what is the accountability of the presidency as well?
The other thing is going to the people, behind in terms of holding up cabinet positions. And this is across the board. Do you have any comments about or any thoughts about who's made it into cabinet and who hasn't?
I think it's more for me. Obviously, there's some that have come back, and there's questions being raised about whether they have an appropriate fit with the portfolio that either they've been appointed to or they've remained in, or whether or not they've been performing at the level at which they've been delivering in their previous portfolio capacity. But for me, the bigger question is how do these ministers, whether they are returning ministers or whether they are new ministers, as well as the DMs that are new as well, and some that are moved from different portfolios to others, how do they fit now with their bureaucracy? Because a key ingredient of any government is, whilst there are ministers and their advisors that will come in, there has to be a communication that exists between the minister and, of course, the DGs and, of course, the bureaucracy that is the real important ingredient in any public administration, in any kind of professionalization of your civil servants, and they get things done. That's the one thing. The second thing is understanding that there is this question around the relationship within NEDLAC between government, business, labor, and of course the other development arm, which is civil society. Will that construct an important dynamic around what is the national dialogue? Because it can't just happen in one spectrum. And so these are some of the challenges or some of the questions we'll have to think about going forward in what will make this GNU hit the ground running, but where will be some of those bottlenecks that need to be addressed in order to hit the ground running.
And what do you think they would be? I mean, when we spoke about the rugby example, you spoke about scrums. I mean, clearly what you'd want is you don't want players to throw forward passes, okay? So the cabinet equivalent of a forward pass, of a disallowed movement, would be what? I mean, what would concern you?
I'm not a rugby fan, so that analogy is really over my head, and I still don't understand the football offside thing. But I think you don't want to be in a situation where you are basically within the tram lines of maybe a tennis match where you're in a singles and you're actually hitting the tram lines. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to understand that you're working as a synergetic cabinet. No ministry is over and above the other. They all have to work in a collective, synergetic and synchronized way, because each ministry is dependent on the other. So your analogy of the forward pass, I think, whilst it just flies over my head, I think for everyone who understands the context of what you're saying, is you don't want that. You want to be able to understand that the Ministry of Transport has to work with the Ministry of Finance, has to work with housing and human settlements. You've got to be able to understand that your mandate is not just about your silos, because that has been a key issue, is how do you get this interconnectivity working within government?
Now, that would be complex at the best of times, even if you have one single majority party. It's even doubly so, maybe 10 times more complex, or 11 times more complex when you actually have these multi-parties that come together, right? What's your opinion then about a party? Because I'm suggesting this as a hypothesis that all the parties, they would sign up to serve, and they would do that, and hopefully to the best of their ability, knowing that if they do it really well, then the country looks good, which actually means all the parties that make up the GNU looks good, and maybe the ANC looks better than most. But at some stage, the party, and I'm talking of the smaller parties, they would want to do something to set themselves apart, to shine, so that they effectively put themselves into the shop window to get your vote and my vote in the next election.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is also important, because you do have parties that have 2 seats and 1 seat that have now portfolios in government. And that's going to be a difficult one as well, because they come in with their kind of thinking. I'm thinking of the land reform and rural development with the PAC. Mm-hmm. How would that synchronize and synergize with agriculture? But more importantly, how would you also work with issues with regard to rural development, not just the context of commercial interest, but rural development also in the context of the president's development model, and looking at how do you create jobs. So you've got to work with the employment ministry as well. How do you create jobs in what you find as your common agricultural policy, or your common policy around development? I think for me, the bigger question is also this issue around, you don't want free riders in the system. You also get the sense that when you have a ministry, it's not just about, whether you've now won an accolade because you've got a portfolio. It's about also making sure you stand up and you write about the small parties, but you also don't want a situation where certain ministries are not performing at the same level. So you've got this thing, everything has to work in tandem with each other. And the challenge for this is, where does the consequence management come into play here in this cabinet? We heard a lot about that in the previous administration. We never see much being done in terms of consequence management. We heard about KPAs and KPIs and monitoring and performance. And remember, planning, monitoring and evaluation still remains within the presidency as well, if my understanding is correct. But At the same time, what is going to be the level of accountability, not just in the context of Parliament, but also the accountability in terms of your performance? And I think that's going to be critical, because if a ministry like Land Reform and Rural Development doesn't find its traction, is it because it's the minister that hasn't performed, or is it because the bureaucracy has still to gel with their new minister?
Well, look, one of the concerns in the past has been this lack of, key performance indicators. Absolutely. So you don't get a presidential report back, which would be ideal for me as a State of the Nation, where he runs through every single department or ministry and scores it. Okay. But here's the last thing, right? In particular, what do you see the role of the DA and how they play it out, considering of all the different members of this coalition of parties, they're the one that has been most criticized because of what they are perceived to be, but they also were once the opposition, the major opposition party, which they're not right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of I wouldn't say a shift in gears, but I think it does change the dynamic for them slightly, because now they're in government. Listening to Helen Ziller this morning, and of course in other interviews, I mean, she does keep that kind of dynamic in terms of there's ministers from the DA in government, but the party she's still a member of the party, and there'll still be that level of how they play their role as a political party that, I'm not sure if you still call them the official opposition. Once you go into government, what are the lines in terms of your identity and your definition? Are you still the official opposition, or are you in government but you're part of the broader spectrum? And then who's the official opposition right now? Is it the MK party, being the third largest party in the country with the number of votes and seats they got in Parliament? These are some of the dynamics I think will have to be looked at in much more deeper analysis and deeper discussion around how do we interpret our political spectrum. We talk a lot about it being reconfigured, but what does it mean? I think for the DA, it's kind of finding that balance between where they are currently in government and where they are currently outside of government. And remember, in the Western Cape, they still are the ruling party that rules the Western Cape.
Absolutely. Well, there you are. That's why we say politics is never boring. Just like rugby is never boring as well. I don't think so. Sanusha Naidu, political analyst from the Institute for Global Dialogue. We'll have that up as a podcast, including the conversation with Fidel Haffajee as well, and basically all the others we've done on the show today. So look out for it on the SFM website.
Hello everybody, Winter M over here. Very excited to be on the biggest show on television. Deal or No Deal Celebrity, coming to you every Saturday, 6 p.m. on SABC1.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, we in fact going to talk about the Just Trend app. Looking out for that as part of our innovation features we do every single day. But for now, another call. Candice on the line. Candice, hi.
Ashraf, how are you?
I'm good indeed, man, and I hope you well. Right, what's your point?
Look, man, Ashraf, I want to agree with Secretary of COSATU, Solipin.
Mm-hmm.
As citizens, even we are not happy with this coalition or government of national unity, but we need to observe these departments of agriculture, and this one is being led by Khadisa. Because this coalition of DA-ANC, we are not happy. We are not happy as much as we understand the values and the principles of DA, that they don't want to see a black person to be successful. But let me tell you, Ashraf, I'm very happy about the outcomes of Northwest. The leadership that we have now in government, I think they are going to do their best to assist the municipalities of Northwest. Specifically, they know Matlosana. I think the Premier must attend the issue of Matlosana very seriously.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your call. Here's a quick response to what you're saying. I think it's right to see how the DA plays himself out. But I'll tell you what as well. What stops you trying to keep an eye on how all the different ministries, whether they run by the DA or the ANC or every other political party, how they perform. Because ultimately, every one of those ministries has an impact on how we live our lives. Therefore, I've often spoken about not so much a government of national unity, a government of national service delivery. And that means all those parties that are represented in this enlarged cabinet, they must deliver, as I've repeated, how a Springbok Rugby World Cup winning team would deliver. One team stronger together. Right, we're going to talk about Just Trend right after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So we talk innovation. We often want to do much more of that, right? So here's it. What about the Just, and I say Just, that's how I spell it, J-U-S, Just Trend app, right? Unati Dulwana with me from the Eastern Cape. I understand has built a social media app by that name. What does that mean? Why should you and I be interested in it? And perhaps more importantly, should we jump onto the app and actually use it? Why? Unati, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf. Thanks to you. Afternoon to South Africa.
Thank you.
Right. Well, the reason is simple, Ashraf. We're a proudly South African platform. We are a proudly African platform. We are saying that, we trend on social media platforms, which are not of our continent. And we say the nastiest things about ourselves, there we'll rather, air our dirty, laundry there. When there's a lot, which is beautiful about our continent, which needs to be said in our own languages by us. Hence, Just Trend.
All right, so I understand that. So maybe tell me more about your platform. Give me the architecture of it.
Okay, so Just Trend basically, Ashraf, is a social media platform, as I was saying, which seeks to educate, the world about South Africa and Africa, specifically our tourist destinations, our languages, as well as the food and culture, that we observe in the continent and country. We seek to be our own voice, not to be told by people, how to express ourselves. I often say, to people specifically, for instance, for someone who's from the Eastern Cape, currently we're experiencing, the initiation season, of Xhosa young boys and soon to be men. And wherever you go, the only headlines that you find, about the practice, it's the deaths of the young men, not the essence, of what it seeks to achieve, the goodness, or the training of the boys. And yet, whenever there is Ramadan, for instance, or Eid, or Diwali, or whatever, festival, from other cultures, you'll find them pasted all over, the media across. So we seek to be that voice, for South Africa and Africa to say, speak for yourselves, tell the world, about your own places. There are so many places, which are unknown. I was saying to someone about a week ago, driving from Cape Town, that the N2, for instance, is for obvious reasons, is projected as the most beautiful route, to drive. But when you do the N1, and you drive via your Berrydales to your Oudtshoorn, for instance, the majesty that you see there, it's untapped, untouched, places which are, which are there.
Okay, I hear you.
Yet to be explored.
Can we just move on? I get what you're saying. So let's look at it practically. I mean, you gave the example about the initiation schools. The reality is, as long as people die, that's always going to be taking precedent. If you don't want to having that as the top news, then ensure people don't die. The other example you gave about Ramadan and Diwali and all that, I mean, those are all examples of different cultures and religious expression in a mainstream media platform, right? And it's really up to people to use it. So you're saying, if you say you want to promote African culture, I think that's great. But to reduce it to your app, doesn't that limit your impact?
Not necessarily, Ashraf. Like we are saying, for instance, the platform is for everyone. All that we are trying to say with the platform is that, for instance, over the past 30 years, one of the missed opportunities that we did as a country was to fail to form a single common African identity. You know, when you go to America or wherever, for instance, you are an American first before you become anything else. Same thing with England, you know, and other places. But here, you know, we see each other along the lines of race, for instance, before we see each other as Africans. So all we're saying is let's strive towards, you know, creating a common identity. Let's share and have a melting pot, for instance, you know, where we say we agree that this is the African or the South African identity.
I'm going to push you because we're out of time. Here's a quick one. So
Sure.
I hear what you're saying. So, okay, practically, what does it look like? I mean, if I think of different social media apps, I think of Twitter having a certain architecture, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. A, what does it look like? B, how do I download this thing? And B, how active is it right now? You got like just under a minute to answer that, please.
Well, it's very active, Ashraf. Currently, we're still only on Google Play Store, so people can just go and search for Just Trend app, you know, and download it there. For those who are on iOS and Huawei, you know, they can go to Google and search for Just Trend app, and then they can register, you know, on the website version.
Okay,
and your second question,
in terms of users, I mean, how many users are you having now, and how impactful has it been so far?
Well, we've launched. We haven't launched formally yet. You know, we're only a month old into Google Play, so we have about 300 users who are currently active. You know, on the platform. So the outlook of the app is like your normal traditional app. You know, you can take photos, you know, and load them. Videos, you can comment, you can like, you can share content. You know, you can comment. You know, you can tag. So we haven't reinvented the wheel. The only thing is that we are saying is put Africa content.
Okay. So I can go onto the app now. Is that what you're saying?
Now you can go in, you can download it now, you can view it if you feel like, if you don't want to download it. But if we would love to have you on the app, you know. Okay. But because all we are saying is the world has called, Ashraf, and Africa is responding.
I think the point is made. So Just Trend. I don't know why you never called it Africa Trend, by the way. Just a thought. Spelled JUS and then TREND. The Just Trend or Just Trend app. Have you downloaded it? What do you think about it? You tell me. If you have used it, I'd like to know. Let's get the news headlines with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, with Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi expected to announce his new executive council tonight, it is hoped that the move will bring stability to the province. The markets have welcomed the country's new cabinet announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa last night. And Spain is the latest country to join South Africa's case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. A full news update coming up 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a pretty heavy backlog of traffic this afternoon around Joburg highways. The big one, of course, stays the N12. Now, there was an earlier truck fire incident at Kamaro's Oakdean area, Kamaro Street at Oakdean. I believe it's been cleared, but there's now a broken down vehicle in the middle lane at the front of all of that heavy traffic. So still very busy from the N3 Elands interchange all the way through Alberton on your way towards the Glen Mall. Plenty of traffic on the N1 south from Buccleuch right through to Maresburg this afternoon. If you're on your way to Soweto, it is the long haul, I'm afraid. The N1 up through Midrand, busy through Buccleuch as far as Samrand. That's all fairly standard for this time of afternoon these days. And the N1 going south, coming from Pretoria, crash at Brockfontein. So quite a heavy queue back through that area towards John Foster Drive. Coming out of Durban, there's some heavy pressure on your way to Pinetown. Motorists sitting in traffic between Spaghetti Junction and the M13 Paradise Valley split. And Cape Town, it's generally busier this afternoon, certainly than it was this morning. A lot of traffic on the N2 route. You're queuing up on Nelson Mandela Boulevard out through Hospital Bend all the way to Bunga Avenue in Langa. There's another queue passing the airport down towards the R300, and then staying on the N2 outbound, it gets heavy as you pass Kailicha towards a crash just after Spine Road. That traffic is backlogged to the R300 on your way out, and coming into town it's quite slow with the onlooking factor as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So, to me, in the midst of, Euro 2024, when the Cricket World Cup just ending, there's also tennis and there's Wimbledon, and you got some stories about that.
There is Wimbledon, and Tennis South Africa have now launched a fan park at the Amex Tennis Town at Monte Casino, where fans can actually watch live Wimbledon screening from the 5th to the 14th of July. The fan park can host up to 1,500 fans, with tickets starting at 200 rands per person. And tennis fanatics will also be able to showcase their skills in a full-size court with interactive coaching lessons. So very exciting. But talking about Wimbledon, let's look at some results from there. Daniil Medvedev is in the second round with a 6-3 and 6-4 and 6-2 win over Alexandra Kovacevic. Casper Ruud beat Alex Bolt 7-6, 6-4 and 6-4 to start his campaign on a high. And Grigor Dimitrov is through to the second round after claiming a 6-3, 6-4 and 7-5 win over Dusan Lajovic. Remember, we have a South African who is playing at Wimbledon. He's actually currently playing right now. Lloyd Harris, not looking good for him. He's so far lost 2 sets. He's won 1 set and they're still busy with the third set. Then in football, Bafana assistant coach Helman Mkhalele says that his aim is to build players' confidence and mental state ahead of their final COSAFA Cup group stage clash. That is tomorrow. Now, South Africa have managed successive draws against Mozambique and Botswana and want all 3 points when they face Eswatini to guarantee a place in the semi-finals. And to get those points, Mkhalele says that he's thinking about a potential tactical switch. And still staying with football, Cape Town City's pre-season friendly against Bundesliga side Asvolveen Wiesbaden has been called off because engine complications reportedly caused a rerouted flight, and despite the club's effort, the German side won't be able to make their tour in South Africa. Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs have announced that they have parted ways with interim coach Kevin Johnson. Johnson was moved from head of the academy to replace head coach Molefi Ntseki as a caretaker as Amakosi battled for results from the start of the 2023-24 season. However, he could not improve things, and Chiefs suffered their worst DStv Premiership finish at 10th, also going to their unprecedented 9th season without a trophy. In cricket, India women beat the Proteas women by 10 wickets in the one-off women's test in Chennai today. India needed to chase 37 after bowling out South Africa for 373 in their second innings, and they were able to do it in 9 overs without losing a single wicket. It's India's second 10-wicket win in tests after the same win over the Proteas at Paarl in 2002. And here's Captain Laura Fulvard.
I think firstly to lose is disappointing, but I think that the character that the group has shown over the last 2 days was absolutely amazing to see. I think to concede 500 and something runs on day 1, I don't think many people thought it would get all the way to the last session on day 4. I think it's the absolute grit and determination that every single batter had going out there to see it through until the end was amazing, and I think it'll do a lot of good things for this group.
Well, staying with cricket, Chloe Tarrant has recovered from injury and will join the Proteas women's squad for the 3-match T20 series in India that starts in Chennai on Friday. Tarrant, who missed the 3 ODIs and 1 off tests due to a back injury, brings a wealth of experience back into the squad, having already played 96 T20s. Then in athletics, former long jump world champion Luvo Mayonga says that he's waiting for permission from World Athletics to return to the sport as a coach and perhaps to compete. The 33-year-old is currently serving a 4-year ban from all forms of sport, which was handed down to him by the World Athletics governing body back in 2020 for a drug violation. Mayonga has since relocated to the Eastern Cape to start afresh.
I moved to Queenstown. There's a college called Queen's College. Those people approaches me to support them in coaching long jump, and they have a new track there that is approved by international athletics. So they're still waiting for a letter from ASA to approve, because I'm still under a suspension, so they don't want to make a conflict of the binds of the rules and regulation of the water. So I think by next week they'll be getting the letter that they can work with me.
Then ending things off with grassroots sports, the 2024 edition of the nationwide Grassroots Get Into Rugby program, which is targeted at children aged 6 to 13, is officially underway, and it heads to the Free State province from the 18th of July. Now, last year, the Grassroots Rugby Initiative saw over 1,000 boys and girls play the game across all 9 provinces of the country, touching lives of hundreds of kids who might previously have never experienced organized sport, let alone rugby. So the program also offers young aspirant rugby coaches, both male and female, an opportunity to develop their rugby coaching skills. And the festival in Bloemfontein will be visited by a couple of Springbok players, just to add a bit of inspiration. So if you didn't know about that program, now you know.
So I want to ask you this before you give your sign-off.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to sign off often now with grassroots issues, right?
Yes.
And I see the new minister of sport, not you, Gayton McKenzie, has already made the point that it can't just be about winning the big events, right? I mean, it is a fundamental issue, isn't it? An investment in grassroots to be able to grow all our sports to the highest level. Otherwise, they would never achieve it. So there's a good example of, like, why isn't our football, our soccer, at the level of our rugby? I mean, there are fundamental reasons why, isn't it?
Start from a young age. And I actually saw someone on X who tweeted him saying that perhaps he needs to try and work with the Minister of Education to make sports compulsory at schools, because that's where kids learn more about some of these sports, right? But also just having some of these initiatives like the Get Into Rugby program just helps to, I guess, advance the system and try to help that grassroots level. But he is telling the truth, and I like some of his ideas. It'll be interesting to see how he's going to pan out in terms of his term as a whole as the Minister.
I want to see him on Wednesday when the losing Proteas team arrives home, and what is he going to say? Right, I want to see that, because we've had Fikile Mbulula as the Minister of Sport before,
yeah,
and his own style, the razzmatazz. Let's see what. Gayton's got his own razzmatazz. I've no doubt about that.
I think one other thing that he said is that he's going to try to help end gangsterism via sports. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to do that.
But that goes to grassroots and changing society using sport, which I think Benny McCarthy's made that point. That, from where he's come from in the Cape Flats, and there's many examples. Quentin Fortune said the same thing. I think Q-Town, or I may be wrong, but certainly in that area around the Athlone area in Cape Town, all came and escaped huge impoverished communities. Stephen Pienaar, another example. Nuclear is where he's come from in Joburg. So there we are. Okay, your sign off.
All right, that's it from my side. I'll have more on other sports tomorrow. In
South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. Sign a petition to demand strong warning labels on unhealthy packaged food. And don't forget to catch the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org on Thursday, 27 June from 3 p.m. Young people tell us how big food companies are feeding them lies.
The world's best cooking show is coming to S3. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Uphumapi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Starts Saturday 13 July at 7:30 p.m. on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
We'll take further calls in a few minutes' time. We will also speak to Pandey Lahotla about his thoughts on, from his own unique insights into the cabinet and what that means. Because, he's very much a scenario planner. That's what I think. Let's talk about the scenario of business, however, with Jimmy Moyaha. As always, he hosts the MoneyWeb Market Update. Jimmy, hi.
Good evening, Ashraf. How are you?
Disappointed the cricket team didn't win, but yeah, at least we have a cabinet, so there we are.
Yeah, small victories. Maybe next time we'll take the Cricket World Cup. I think it's been long overdue for us. I think we're all waiting in hope and anticipation, and perhaps maybe another year or two or a couple more years of waiting will do us good.
Absolutely. Okay, go ahead. What's on the show today?
So we're also taking a look at the reactions that markets have had towards the developments around the cabinet. We're going to be looking at the reactions from a market perspective. We're going to be speaking to Peregrine Capital around that and seeing how they've seen the international reactions, or at least reactions within their asset management and their hedge fund business. Then we've got a conversation with Professor Adrian Seville of Gibbs as well around the cabinet that's been chosen. Is this the right cabinet for business sentiment? Is this the right cabinet to get things back on track? We've had conversations in the past to say we need to make unpopular appointments and appointments that are to the benefit of South Africa, and we're going to look at that and see where we stand on that and how do we move forward. And then there's an interesting story that's been developing around Fly Saf Air. You might find that your flights have become cheaper over the last couple of weeks and months, and it seems as though there might be a subsidy involved there that shouldn't be there. So we're going to dig into that. It seems like there's foreign ownership from an Irish parent company that might be raising a couple of questions, and there is legislation that we might need to look into there. So might not be the best outcome from that conversation, but hopefully we get to the bottom of that and we try and unpack what's been happening there, because it does affect the travel that you and I go through. And then we have a conversation with Standard Bank around the municipal tariff hikes. We remember that over the last couple of days, 178 municipalities had applied for tariff increases effective from today, but only 66 of those were granted. So we're going to look into that. We're going to look into the mechanics behind that and what it means for alternative solutions. We've seen that people have increasingly decided to pursue alternative solutions like solar. So we're going to speak to the Look-See guys and understand how the new tariff hikes compare with what you're paying at the moment. And then we've got personal finance on a Monday, and we're looking at how to handle your finances if you are returning to South Africa as an expat. So many people may have worked outside the country, have decided to return to the country, and we're going to be looking at all of the nitty-gritties that come with reintroducing yourself into South Africa as an expat or as a returning expat. But before we get to that, Henko Krier joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been moving the markets. They certainly have been having quite an interesting day. Good evening, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. The Rand briefly coming below 18 Rand, but couldn't hold it.
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all of our listeners. Yes, and I would also add to that, Jimmy, that the markets, locally at least, they responded quite positive to the cabinet announcement. Because we see that the JSE all-share index finished 0.3% stronger at the end of the day. And during the course of the afternoon, it traded about 1% up, but then settled at 0.3% stronger at a level of 79,956 points. The industrial index also gained 0.4% today. The financial index quite a bit, and it finished 1.2% stronger. It's only the resources index that pulled back, and it lost 0.8% today. Glencore gave a stellar performance today because it finished 2.5% stronger, and there was also First Rand, which gained 1.2%. But on the negative side, Richmond and Prosus each lost 1%, and then Anglo lost 2.5%, followed by Naspers finishing 2.8% weaker. But other companies that gave strong performances today were Alphaman, Motus and Tiger Brands. Alphaman finished today 11% stronger. Motus and Tiger Brands each gained 6.5%. Sappi and Redefine finished 5.5% up. And there's also Grindrod, Hyprop and Italtal. Each of those finished today 4.5% stronger. But unfortunately, Amplats and Northam lost 5.5% each today. Sibanye-Stillwater 3% down. Montauk, Implats and Bidcorp finished today 2.6% weaker. On the commodities market, the price of gold is currently $2,325 an ounce. Silver is $29.20. Platinum falling quite sharply because it's down to $975 an ounce, and palladium is $965. The oil price is $85.80 a barrel. And then the exchange rate, yes, the Rand looking up and now trading at 18 Rand 23 to the dollar, 23 Rand and 5 cents to the pound, 19 Rand 55 to the euro, and 12 Rand and 11 cents to the Australian dollar. And the Bitcoin's price is $60,700, and that is still 1,170,000 Rand. And if I can maybe close off with the markets overseas, we see that the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 in the US trading about 0.1% stronger. The Nasdaq is gaining 0.3%, And then European stocks, they finished in the green a short while ago. The FTSE 100 and the DAX each finished 0.4% stronger, and the CIC 40 gained 1.5% today. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thanks very much for that update, Henku. We're going to be looking into these and other movements. One of these movements that we'll be looking into is the volumes that have been traded. I think I just saw something that said that on Friday we had north of 8 billion rands in volumes of JSE equities that were purchased, or 8 billion rands in value rather, of JSE equities that were purchased on Friday alone. So we're going to look into that. We're going to look into what that means going forward into the month of July, and so on and so forth. But for now, Ashraf, back to you and the team. We'll be back a little later on.
Are you ready to take your brand to a whole new level? Have you ever thought about how big companies use strong PR to get more people to know about their brands? Their Law Group presents the inaugural Building a Brand Through PR Masterclass. Join us on Wednesday, July 3rd from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the DP World Wonders Stadium in Johannesburg. Learn from 12 industry experts as they share their case studies and personal testimonies that will transform your approach to brand building. Visit www.prmasterclass.co.za to get your tickets. Only 650 rands for an in-person experience, or join us virtually for just 350 rands. Don't miss this chance to master the art of PR and take your brand to the next level. Building a brand through PR Masterclass, powered by independent media.
In the heart of darkness, a beacon of light emerges. A brand new season is coming your way with your 2024 Miss South Africa Top 30. Hosted by our reigning queen, Miss South Africa, we embark on a transformative journey. Join us for the spectacular new season of Crown Chasers.
Crown Chasers is back.
Starts 29 June at 8:30 p.m. only on S3 Open Up.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So, a couple of things just worth noting. First of all, some changes within Al Jamaa, their party in Parliament. So we now know that Councillor Imran Musa, who should have been an MP in Parliament, he's been replaced by the advocate Shamima Saleh. So she will now be an MP together with the head of Al Jamaa, who's now a deputy cabinet minister, Hanif Hendricks. That's one thing. The other one, in terms of the BET awards, right? So we know Tyler, I didn't mention it earlier, winning the best new artist and the best international act as well, and then Makatsi winning for the best new international artist. And there we are. Both of them are born in South Africa, made in South Africa, and made it all around the world. Isn't that fabulous? Let's get to where does South Africa go beyond just that cabinet announcement of yesterday. We chat to Pali Hotla, who's the former statistician general. He's put together a piece about the GNU and what that really means, right? So important issues that's come through. Let's chat to him. Pali Hotla, appreciate your time as always. Good of you to connect on the National Pulse. Pali, do I have you there? Okay, I think we will. Yeah, I've got you there. Good to connect with you, Pali. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Right. So, okay, we can't hear you too clearly. Maybe if you can speak a bit louder. We sort of battling.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I think we can now, right? Okay, for you, first of all, what's the biggest insight that you can take out of last night's cabinet announcement?
Well, I think there has been, one would say, progress. We are in a fix, and that hiatus had to be broken. That's a step forward. But the biggest and most important steps are how the policies will play out. And I think we need to look at the manifestos of different parties. In other countries, particularly in Europe, people look at the manifestos of different parties, analyze them, and get ready to implement them whatever party wins. Now, when you have manifestos of different parties that come from different sides of the equation, is how do you put this scrambled egg and scramble it and try and scramble it again? It's very, very difficult because the policies are diametrically opposed. Obviously, one has to look at the basic part of these things, that is poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Now, what are the kinds of policies that will take us out of that? And I think fundamentally we need to understand whether there is foolproof, future-proof for executing that kind of program. So we need to know how many jobs will be created following which set of policies. So it's just not intentions, but it's specific policies and interventions that will yield the result. And those policies certainly will lean to a particular slant, will take a particular slant. And the parties involved don't share necessarily a particular slant ideology, for a better word.
So, I mean, it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Because you've got 11 parties. We know the ANC is the dominant party of the 11, followed by the DA. But then the policies vary greatly from party to party. The manifestos certainly vary greatly. But at some stage, they have to work together. I've given the example of the rugby team, stronger together, finding a way from different backgrounds to work together. What, therefore, would be President Ramaphosa's biggest challenge in getting this entire disparate group that has now made up this coalition, this cabinet, to be able to move in the same direction, when at the same time they're also competing for space to try and promote their own parties?
Well, that's the conundrum that is there. If we had agreed on as a nation on what we want to deal with, then the parties, the players wouldn't matter. But that agreement was never reached, except as the large part as a constitution. But there is not a document that is agreed upon around how South Africa should look like in the future. We may talk about the NDP, but the NDP just shows broad stroke hopes. So the policies are the crucial things that translate hopes to reality. And unfortunately, the backliner, the striker, the middle fielder, the left winger are all playing their own game. And so to try and bring that team together to see what game they have to play is going to be very, very, very difficult, particularly when there hasn't been an instruction from society on how they should play. So this national dialogue may yield that result. But politics are politics. These guys have been elected, and they'll say, what is this national dialogue for? We have voted members. The society has spoken. The people have spoken. So there are hurdles, particularly political opportunism will emerge when one party or one member feels threatened by something like a national dialogue. So, but that is the only instrument that can restore the situation. But that national dialogue is not broad strokes. It's about future-proof of policies that have to be implemented. And those future-proof of policies that have to be implemented have to be scientific. It cannot be bringing mixed masala together and hope for an average that will be good. It will never be. It is crystallization, very, very, very clear crystallization of combination of policies. Fortunately, at England meeting, we showed in 2018 what set of policies go together to yield a different result. There's also a fortunate ingredient in this, that business for South Africa during COVID came to government and said, we are going to generate the following targets. And I think starting at those targets become the pay for enough. What has to be agreed upon, or at least it's not an agreement this time around. It's a technical process of how best those targets can be reached. And that's a process of technocrats. And then once that has been concluded, then it can be politically mobilized. So business for South Africa had come with targets that I think would be agreeable to anyone.
So,
be it employment, be it reducing inequality, be it all economic growth, those targets are okay. And what remains is for us to say we agree on this target. Now we have to find a path and implement scenarios. In 2019, actually produced pathways for specific policy outcomes. And that's what we have to do now. We have all the instruments inside.
So here's the thing. Do you, for example, and the scenarios you've spoken about before as well, do you then have the ear of the president?
Hello?
I was saying, do you have the ear of the president? Can you present this to the president for them to understand these scenarios and the challenges they face and the solutions thereof?
I don't think we have to have the ear of the president. We have to have the ear of the society. Because if you have the ear of the president will capture you. So we got to really have the ear of society, and that ear of society is how the technocrats contribute to the betterment of society. Then the politicians, whichever way they want to sing their ear, will sing their ear in a way they want to listen.
Okay, let's leave it
at
at that.
It can't be a preference of being called and they're coming to whisper something. No. That doesn't work.
Got that. Barney Hotla, former Statistician General, with these scenarios and whether they're going to work and well, should they be listening to him? That's really the big question. And are they listening at all? Let's wrap up with some voice notes I can play. One about COSATU.
Good afternoon, Katna and the Radio SA listeners. COSATU is now drinking something. It's always drinking a beer these days, really. COSATU, it's always including themselves in politics, but they say they are staying there. They are there for the workers. They stay for the workers, but they want to control the ANC. Must talk to this and must not talk to this. What kind of union is that? I corner man. You, thank you, sir.
Okay, got that. Here's the last one I can play.
Good afternoon. You know, this whole rugby unity, it's just false unity. There's no unity when it comes to the country and rugby. Yes, everybody who loves the sport or their sport, it's not everybody's sport, but those who love rugby, it's a false unity. Each to their own there. Teresa, Cape Town.
Okay, got that. But I tell you what, I'll disagree on one point. I'm talking about the players that make up a World Cup winning team. Their unity is stronger together on the pitch, and that really is ultimately what matters. But that's the show. Love it that you engage with me. Love that you try to call. Couldn't take all the calls. Couldn't play all the WhatsApps. It does happen. My apologies. Feel free to, by the way, tweet out the same comments you've had on Facebook as well as on our Twitter or X platforms, and just tag me as well together with SFM Radio. I'll certainly look at it. Tomorrow, as expected, another further insight, and we also have the announcements of the Gauteng cabinet. So thanks to the team that puts it all together, in Tando, Tumi, Keys, Vusani, as well as Temba, and then Madupi hosting that news desk as he takes over at 6 o'clock. Here he is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good evening. The top story is Asawa Lesufi to announce his new cabinet tonight, and Spain joins SA's case against Israel at the ICJ.